the big historical moment of the week that we have to cover. Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, second in line to the president. So if the president dies and the vice president dies, Kevin McCarthy would be president of the United States. So it's a high position. You're number 3 in the United States, right? But he was a really weak speaker, and you could talk more about that in a bit and kind of what he gave up. But the thing that I think is funny about it is McCarthy did this impeachment nonsense on his own. I mean, no vote, nothing. He just did it on his own, basically to satisfy Trump. And then what happened was with the government shutdown thing, he was about to get hosed, and they were going to shut down the government. So you wouldn't be flying an airplane, Social Security checks wouldn't be going out, Medicaid wouldn't be getting paid, Medicare wouldn't be getting paid. It would have been horrible to have a government shutdown, right? He barely avoided that. The Democrats bought him 45 days. That pissed off his constituents, and they ousted him from office. So we're going to watch a real quick clip of that on the ABC News special report. Special report. Dun, dun, dun.
This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting, David Muir.
Good afternoon. We're coming on the air for this high-stakes showdown unfolding on Capitol Hill at this very moment. For the first time in American history, House lawmakers have voted now to remove the Speaker. Speaker Kevin McCarthy forced to surrender the gavel following a rebellion led by members of his own party, led by Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz in particular. Hardline Republicans furious at him for making a deal with Democrats and moderate Republicans to avert a government shutdown, essentially upset with him that he kept the government open. Speaker McCarthy could only afford to lose 4 Republicans. He lost many more. He would have needed help from Democrats as well to stay in power. But Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries making it clear today that this fight was between McCarthy and House Republicans, Democrats en masse voting against him as well.
So there it was. For the first time in U.S. history, they ousted the Speaker with a no confidence vote. Or a motion to vacate, I think is what it's called. But yeah, first time it's ever happened. The third most powerful person in the country. He wasn't that powerful. He gave up all his power.
He gave up all of his power really in the manner in which he got the position. Mm-hmm. He was so desperate for the position, he was willing to take a deal where he could basically be ousted at any moment in time.
Right.
I mean, think about it in like, just any regular person starting a job terms. I know, most of us could be fired at any point in time, but would you truly go and accept a job and be able to perform it well and with confidence if basically when you walked in, they were like, by the way, we're totally going to fire you.
Right. Well, it's even worse than that.
And because they basically told him straight up. They're like, I mean, if somebody's saying to you, you can only take this if you promise to let us, just can you whenever we feel like it, they're telling you they're going to do that.
No, we talked about that back when, because it took 15 votes just to get him as the Speaker, which had never happened before either. So he's made history twice now as Speaker. Right.
Both in ways you don't want to make history.
Right. Both in embarrassing ways. And the thing about it, we talked about it when it happened. It's worse than the scenario you're doing, because that's like you're applying for the job. They don't want to hire you. And then you tell them, well, look, at any time you could fire me for any reason if anybody here is unhappy. And he was actually really stupid about this. But let's watch this clip here, and we'll get into this kind of what happened, because he basically did this to himself in a lot of ways. He basically asked for it. So here's Marnie Hughes on News
Speaker
Nation.
Kevin McCarthy may be in jeopardy. Representative Matt Gaetz from Florida claims that he does have enough votes to oust the Speaker from his leadership role. The vote to vacate could come as soon as today, in fact, possibly in the next few hours. Joining me now, News Nation Washington Bureau Chief Mike Vaquera. Mike, good morning to you. I guess afternoon in D.C. Does Gaetz have the votes he says he has?
Well, it remains to be seen. He says he has it, and it's going to be a very near thing, Marty. There's no question about it. Here we go. This is going to be an historic day, potentially here in Washington. A speaker has not been removed like this from office in 113 years, Marty. And why is Kevin McCarthy facing this insurrection within his own party in the House of Representatives? Because you remember last week when the Congress voted at the last minute on Saturday night to keep the government open, McCarthy, as Speaker of the House, relied on the help of Democrats to get him across the finish line. Some 90 Republicans voted against him, and this is the upshot. Remember, McCarthy at the beginning of the year, Marty, had 15 votes that were required in the full House before he was able to get enough votes to become Speaker of the House. And part of the price that he paid was any single member. He made this agreement with conservatives in the Freedom Caucus like Matt Gaetz. Any single member could make a motion at any time, one member, to remove him from the Speaker's chair, take that Speaker's gap.
Which was his first big mistake, right? Because usually you have to have like a majority vote to remove him.
Right.
But then he made it to, nope, just one person. That's all you need. One person to be pissed at me for any reason. And out of 200 and whatever, what is it, 20-something people, you're going to piss somebody off.
What are the odds that somebody's not pissed at you?
Yeah.
You know?
The odds that somebody isn't hate you right now is kind of stupid. But anyway, so his whole thing was, so this is kind of what happens though, is when you cripple your, like, the Republicans are the majority in the House. It's the only branch of the government, other than debatably the Supreme Court, that they have any sort of control. Because the Democrats have the Senate and the presidency, right? So they have the House, but they barely have it. They have it by about 4 votes, like he said. That's all they needed, right? So McCarthy basically made the calculation of, look, the Democrats aren't going to want to cause all this upheaval and all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And normally you would get 48 hours for him to try and secure votes, right? But he waived that, thinking, oh, well, as long as I get at least a few Democrats and I don't give them time to get together and organize, they'll all vote in my favor. That's what he thought.
Why would he think that?
Because Democrats typically are trying to keep the status quo. That's one of the things. And the thing about the government shutdown, I mean, they bailed him out on that. That was a Democratic bill. Almost no Republicans voted for that. That was all Democrats that kept the government from shutting down. And then after they did that, and he took credit for it, even though he didn't do shit. And then he went on news the very next day and said, hey, the Democrats are the ones trying to shut down the government, when the Democrats are the ones who voted for it and wrote it. And the Republicans didn't. So he went and lied on national television to try and... So he's lied and thrown them under the bus a couple times, where he'll make a promise and then break it, right? But that's the problem is he has no power in the Republican Party. He's got the crazy Trump wing of the party, right, which is like half of them. And he's got to placate both sides, so he has no power. So if he wants to get anything done, he has to go to the Democrats. Right? So he tried to pull a House of Cards shit here where he was like, hey, if I waive my 48 hours, the Democrats won't have time to get together and talk, and I'll at least get 5 or 6 or 7 votes from them of Democrats who don't want to break the status quo, and I'll be okay. Well, let's see what actually happened. We know he got ousted, so we know that didn't work. But let's actually look at what happened here.
Boehner resigned from Congress before the House voted. So I guess the question being, what do Democrats do? Have they shown any of their cards at this point, Mike?
Right, and the irony here is because McCarthy relied on Democrats to keep the government open last week, the irony here is Democrats just emerged from a closed-door meeting of their own in the basement of the Capitol this morning, and they have come out with a unified front. They will not support McCarthy in this fight. You know, if some of them did, then they would counterbalance the votes against McCarthy and the votes we're about to see this afternoon. They're saying now that they're not going to do it. They're saying basically it's up to...
So his bet, right, if I waive it, they won't have time to get together. What happened? They got together and they all unanimously agreed in like a 20-minute meeting. 200 plus people agreed. Fuck that guy. He's on his own. We're tired of his ass talking shit and breaking his promises. Fuck him. Like, let the Republicans.
You know what? Maybe had he given them more time, he would have given some people a chance to be like, but are you sure it's a good idea to, with only 20 minutes, they all just jumped on board. It backfired.
Right. Well, what was really funny about that was after they had that meeting and he kind of realized, oh, that's what's going on. He tried to stall the vacate vote till the end of the day with a bunch of nonsense in between. And while they was trying to stall and having all these other like non-issues brought up, right, house cleaning shit, he's running around to all the Democrats going, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. They're all sitting there going, nope, good luck. They were like, leave it to the Republicans. The Republicans can eat their own. We don't give a shit.
So what it honestly just makes me think, though, okay, so now he's been voted off the island, only he's still kind of on the island.
I think
he's just demoted. He's still on the island, but he's not in charge of the island, and everybody hates him. Is he just going to be eaten alive, to sort of pull the string on this weird metaphor I've started? Like, how on earth is he going to manage to do anything in here while he rides this thing out?
I think he basically, I think it's over, because what is he going to do? He goes back to California where he's from, and he barely, he won that district by a bit because it's a more conservative district, but it's like, that is so fucking embarrassing. How do you run against anybody? He's going to get primaried in a heartbeat and he'll be gone. I think he just finishes out his term and does the absolute minimum. And
I mean, I'm even just thinking about him finishing out this term. Like he's basically, that's even just like a nightmare. He's not going to be able to, like, he really doesn't have anybody whose team he's on or can be on. Like, he's the kid in dodgeball that's standing there at the end, or like, when you're like picking teams or whatever, like who's going to be on this side or who's going to be on that side. He's the kid that's standing there that nobody's picking,
right? And
yet he's still in the gym,
right? He's the kid with asthma that nobody wanted, right? But yeah, yep, nope. I don't know what he's going to do. I think it's cooked. I mean, it's all cooked, but
he's kind of sunk. I mean, he's sunk in a broader sense, not just the speaker position. Like, he alienated so many people that, like, he doesn't have any good way back in, even not in that high of a position.
Right. Well,
at all. He doesn't have a good way back in anywhere.
Right. Well, and the other thing was Matt Gaetz, who was the one who brought up the vote, right, and was fundraising while they were doing the vote on this vote, right? I mean, it burns them down to where it's like, what do they do now? I mean, they're talking about, well, who's going to be the next speaker? They really don't have anybody that could do it. And then somebody's bringing up, well, maybe Trump, and they're like, well, yeah, right. Like, what is Trump? Trump wouldn't do that. You know how many hours you have to work to do that fucking job? Trump's not going to do that job. But they might have to do a situation where if they can't get the votes and everything and get a speaker up, they might have to elect a Democratic speaker. And a Democratic speaker in a Republican majority House, that would be weird. That would be unprecedented. I mean, we're in literally what's going to happen next. Nobody fucking knows. We are literally beyond the looking glass here. Up is down, north is south. Nothing makes sense.
I can't imagine a world where they would put a Democrat in that position, though.
They might have to if they can't get a Republican in there. If they go weak,
how would they fail a Republican in there? How is it? Okay, paint me the picture where that becomes a failure.
Because they're divided right now. So most of the party hates Matt Gaetz. So Matt Gaetz' political career is over for doing this. Kevin McCarthy's political career is over because of this happened to him, because he's so weak and feckless, right? Who else are they going to throw up there? Marjorie Taylor Greene, Jim Jordan? I mean, who do they got? And anybody they pick
regardless of whoever they throw up there, you would just think, just so the Democrats weren't in any sort of power position, they would just let it happen.
They might, but that's going to be really difficult to pull together because anybody you put up there, half of them are going to hate him or her, right? If you put up a standard tax cuts, Republican, older school kind of Republican, like a Mitt Romney kind of character. So you put somebody like that up there, all the MAGA people are going to say he's a rhino. We can't vote for him because then they have to go back to their base. And if they vote for a guy who's a rhino, right, Republican in name only, then they're going to have to say, well, this guy doesn't believe in the Jewish space lasers and doesn't believe that the election was rigged and you voted for him. So they'll lose votes. If they try to put up a MAGA, a far-right MAGA person, right, then the regular squares that are from California and New York, those Republicans that got elected in conservative districts, but in very blue states, they need some Democratic voters. Otherwise, they can't win. Right? So they can't go in there and say
political suicide for them to go in that far over.
Right. So if I vote for Jim Jordan.
That's true. A Republican from New York,
Yeah, but you voted for Jim Jordan. So no, you're a fucking nut. Like, we're going to go for the guy that's primarying you. And hopefully he's more reasonable.
Right.
So they're kind of in that position where they might not be able to get anybody. And if that's the case, then they can't get a majority. The Democrats now have, because they'll be split into two divisions, the Democrats now have all the votes that could actually count. So all you really need is to get 5 Republicans to vote with the Democrats, and you can have your own speaker. So if you get 5 Republicans to vote for a Democratic speaker, because it's just a clusterfuck, you might get 5 of those guys from New York or California or Washington or Oregon that might go, you know what? I can swallow this guy. I can at least sell that to my constituency. And now we have a speaker. I mean, like I said, we're through the looking glass. That's very possible now.
God, that's so weird to think about.
I know, isn't it?
I mean, it feels like this is one of those weird outer space, like that really weird Star Trek episode,
right.
Situation.
Yeah, that would be like, yeah.
Like, what do you mean the Klingons are friends with the, wait, what?
Well, that was that. Yeah, I remember that was a Star Trek The Next Generation came out, and the tactical officer was a Klingon, Worf. And and all the Star Trek fans, like my parents, were watching it going, we're aligned with the Klingons now?
Right. I mean, okay, I really want to print my own T-shirt that says Team Worf because I was so into that character. Still am, just saying.
God, yeah.
But you see what my point is. Like, after, seeing original series, you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait, how did...
Yeah.
But I thought we don't like... But the...
Right.
It just becomes a big,
yeah,
moment.
Like I said, up is down, left is right. Dogs and cats are playing with each other. Total pandemonium.
Suddenly we're friends with the Klingons, right?
Like,
who knew?
Yeah. It's like Alien and Predator got together to do a good morning talk show.
Right.
It's just the weirdest thing. But I like to see them infighting. Like I always say, if I'm watching the Nature Channel and it's a couple cougars ripping apart a gazelle or a deer, I'm kind of like, nah. But if it's a spider and a centipede going on it, man, I'm all for it. I'm betting on that one. I'm watching that episode.
That's the battle. That's the battle you're in for.
That's the battle I want to see. Oh man. Well, anyway, so McCarthy's gone. That was the news, and we'll see what happens to the world. It'll still be here, but geez, it's just
it might. But it has gotten a little bit weirder. I feel like every week when I introduce the show, I say, "My God, what's happening in the news? It's so weird." And I feel like that's not supposed to be a tagline,
right?
But every week, what's happening in the news is so weird that I find myself being like, I can't wait to talk about the news. It's super weird this week.
I know. It's just crazy, crazy, crazy. And everybody's like, remember when it was more normal? And I'm like, no, you know what? It's always been like this. We just have social media and stuff now, so we're aware of everything that's going on. Right?
Some of the weirdness was a little hidden from us for a while, or
Right.
took long enough to get to us that it felt more spread out than it was, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when I was a cop and I used to read the summary reports every morning. It was part of my job. And so I read all the reports that the police filed in my district for the previous night, right? When I got into the office, or the previous weekend, or whatever it was. And you'd read them and you're like, how did this not make the news? How did this not make the news? And you realize then the newspaper would be a freaking novel if all these crimes made it, because some of them were hilarious. And you're like, that's a great story. You know, some were just like amazing. Anyway.